Across the world, education remains a key driver of innovation and national development. And so we ask, is Nigeria's education meeting global standard? With us here in the studio is Professor Gozie Obodo. He's the Rector, Institute of Management and Technology, Enugu. Good morning and you're welcome to the program.
Good morning and thank you for having me here today.
Yes, it's our pleasure to have you. Now, Prof, when we talk about meeting global standard, what comes to mind?
What comes to mind is an educational system that can produce graduates from the different disciplines who can compete with their counterparts globally in their spheres and areas of specialization. Take, for instance, that a Nigerian medical doctor who graduates from a Nigerian university should be able to compete with any other medical doctor who graduated from any other university in the world. The same thing in engineering, the same thing in physics, the same thing in chemistry, the same thing in every sphere of academic endeavor. And therefore, the idea is for our educational standard to meet minimum international standard in education in order to produce that kind of qualitative graduates who can compete with his peers in anywhere in the world. And that's the aspiration. And so that's where we should be heading to. The minimum international standard for education.
So what is the minimum international standard? What are the key elements that would define, a world-class institution today?
Well, as you know, this is a generation that is ICT driven. And therefore, everything we're doing should be based on good ICT knowledge and skills in the pursuance of the profession. That's number one. Number two is the infrastructure, the academic infrastructure. Infrastructure is not just buildings. Infrastructure entails, yes, buildings that are functional. Buildings that have 24 hours electricity supply. Buildings that have internet accessibility. Buildings that have the necessary lab equipment and computers and projectors and all the educational facilities that will make that institution to have what the students will need to excel. So, like I said, the ICT-driven education, the facilities, like I said, which encompasses modern buildings, and qualitative teachers and lecturers. I use the word qualitative. And so, there's a Latin maxim that says, nemo dat quod non habet. In other words, you cannot give what you don't have. And so if you have teachers, if you have lecturers, if you have professors who have failed to improve themselves from when they graduated and to meet the current expectations of a professor, a lecturer, a teacher, again, acquiring ICT skills, again, upgrading his academic profiles, again, exposing himself to many national and international conferences, again, linking and working in collaboration with his professional peers to know what your colleagues are doing in UK, to know what your colleagues are doing in US, to know what your colleagues are doing in China, to know what your colleagues are doing in other parts of Europe, and even in other parts of Africa. And unless you acquire these professional and technological skills, you cannot impart that to your students. What you were taught when you graduated 20, 30 decades ago is no longer relevant in this 21st century. And so, I keep making this analogy that unless we do that, then it will become again analogous to anybody who is dispensing expired knowledge. Because the knowledge you have is expired in contemporary 21st century. It's expired. It's no longer the theories, it's no longer the academic standards of those days that is applicable or that is required to produce the kind of graduates we're talking about. And so you can see that this is a very holistic approach. And we must address all of them separately. If we must have a good system that will meet the expected minimum international standard.
All right, Professor, what would you say are the biggest barriers or gaps that Nigeria is facing when it comes to meeting global standard education?
Well, we've identified what it takes, and for good medical practitioners, they will tell you that the most effective medical therapy is based on a very, very good diagnosis. If you cannot diagnose the problem, you cannot begin to propose solutions. And that's why a good doctor cannot start treatment unless they first of all conduct tests to know exactly what is the problem, to be able to identify the source of the problem. And when they do that, then they can reasonably make the right prescriptions. Okay, so now we have identified these key issues. Key, number one, ICT. How prepared are we? What's our national and state preparation to have our students be taught with very good ICT facilities? And I say that in the context of number one, that every ICT equipment is dependent on electricity, on power. And so what's the state of our power generation in the country? Have we come to the point where we have uninterrupted 24 hours electricity supply? That's number one. Number two, you all know how recently we have now come to the gradation of power supply, band A and band B. And unfortunately, many of our tertiary institutions have been branded or graded band A, which means that tertiary institutions have to now pay a lot of money to have electricity. Now, what is the alternative to this? The alternative, you will say, would be for us to begin to solarize. And you will think that we should, as a country, taking into cognizance that our power generation can no longer meet the demands. And we should then aggressively implement and enforce the solarization policy to make sure that all tertiary institutions are solarized as an alternative. Have we done that? Are we doing that? And so you see that we still have that gap in terms of the provision of electricity, which is critical for ICT deployment. Now, you come to the facilities. The other day, ASU issued a notice of an impending strike. Again, the same issue for many decades. This ASU federal government tussle. One step forward, two steps backward. And so you find that the same issue of the facilities in the universities, the conditions of service are still lingering. They're still lingering. And that is the other major component. We must have the facilities to teach. We must have the smart boards to teach. No longer the days when students were taught with blackboards and all those old ways of teaching. We need smart boards that are ICT driven. We need constant electricity, whether it comes from the national grid or whether it comes from the solarization. But we need it 24 hours. And like I said before, we need to address the quality of our teachers and our academic staff.
All right, Professor, now that you have mentioned or, proven how important education is, why does it feel like the government is not looking at it, with priority? The education sector budgeted 7% of the national budget to education. Then that's approximately, say, 1.58 trillion naira for the national budget. Why is it so? Why is there no much attention in education when everybody knows how important it is?
Well, my dear, that is a good question. And I can tell you that's one of the major challenges we have in this country. Major. Because education is the foundation. And like you rightly pointed out, why do our leaders fail to prioritize education the way it should? Now let's look at this. The United Nations has recommended that every member state should aspire to budget a minimum of 25% of their national budget to education. A minimum. Now you have quoted 7% in the case of Nigeria. And you can now see the very huge disparity between 7% and minimum 25% that is recommended. And so you see the gap that we have not even met half of that recommendation as a country. And consequently, it now explains to you why we have all these challenges in our educational system. Because 7% of our national budget will not do it. And it's obvious to us that it has not been able to do it. That's why we have this lingering agitation between ASU and the federal government. Lingering, unending, year after year. Government after government. But now, let me share the glimmer of hope with you. Glimmer of hope is that despite what is happening at the national level, we have a totally different case in Enugu State. And I am very, very proud of our governor, His Excellency Dr. Peter Ndubuisi, who has, for the first time, started budgeting 33% of the state budget for education. Unprecedented. United Nations prescribed 25%, but our governor has consistently budgeted 33%. And you can see that this is a governor that has a full appreciation of the importance of education and is not paying lip service to it. He is actually showing that he knows that the foundation of everything about governance depends on the quality of education. Because it is when we train good citizens in different spheres of life, then we can hope that these qualitative students will come out and help us to manage every sector of our society and give us a better society. Minimize kidnapping, minimize unemployment, enhance productivity, and have a more productive society, a safer society, because very few educated people will be tempted to go into kidnapping. Very few. There is a self-dignity that comes with education. You may be poor, you may be unemployed, but there is a self-dignity that I am educated and that I have classmates who are out there and they are monitoring you and they know whether you are now a kidnapper or whether you are a broadcaster or whether you are a journalist, what you are doing. There's pride that comes with it. And that pride will minimize crime. Self-dignity. And when you continue to budget 7% and we continue to underperform in all the indices for national development based on education, then the rate of our problem will continue. Find high rate of unemployment, high rate of insecurity, high rate of kidnapping, high rate of, because many of these our citizens have not been given the opportunity to go to school. Those who went have not been given the necessary support, and it's a multiplier effect. And the truth of the matter is that we cannot continue to play the ostrich with this matter, because everybody who lives in the country, I don't care who you are, we all will face the consequence if we don't address this. Even for your family. The more educated you have in your family members, the safer you are. The more educated, the more vulnerable you are, because they will devour you.
All right. Now you've mentioned the barriers or the problems that we are facing when it comes to meeting the standards. But what areas do you think that we are closest to these global standards? Where are we getting it right at the moment?
Well, we are getting it right. You know, like I said, there's a glimmer of hope. It's not all that bad. Some state governors are doing very well. Prime example is our governor, who has become the national beacon for leadership. National beacon. Everywhere in the country now. They'll tell you, oh, go to Enugu and see what's going on there. The cleanest state in Nigeria. The state that budgets 33%. The state that has turned everywhere to construction sites. And so I am going to continue to use Enugu State and our governor as the beacon of leadership. And I'm saying it in the context that other governors will definitely emulate him, and they're already emulating him. And so if other governors emulate him, and we have governors increasing their budgetary allocations to education, okay, and aspiring to meet this minimum 25%, which the UN has prescribed, I can tell you that collectively we will see tremendous progress in the educational system in Nigeria. And I am also confident that the more the governors do this, the more that the federal government will now be pressurized to increase the budgetary allocation to education. We need to do this. Just like you said, why are we playing a blind role to this? Why? Something that is as important, as foundational, as indispensable as this issue of education. Okay, so I will expect that we will see more and more progress as more governors key in and emulate our governor, and as the federal government also gets pressurized to do something. But having said that, I think that the Nigerian education system is also going to continue to get better, primarily due to the intervention of TED Fund. TED Fund is one agency that I can tell you has been doing very well in helping to address our educational challenges. Okay, in terms of the provision of infrastructure, in terms of helping in the training of our academic staff. Until recently, TED Fund was sponsoring young academics to go abroad and pursue their postgraduate degrees. And then with the exchange rate increase recently, they have now limited it to Nigeria. But the point of the matter is that many young academics could not have pursued postgraduate degrees because they are not making enough money to survive, not to talk of funding postgraduate education. But now with TED Fund sponsorship and scholarship, many of them all over the country are abroad, many of them in Nigerian universities, and are improving their educational qualifications to master's level, to PhD. And again, we're hoping that when they graduate and come back, they would have improved themselves and they can now impart better educational quality.
All right. Now, do you think our universities actually meet international accreditations and research standards?
Yes. By the way, until recently, we've been having a proliferation of universities in Nigeria. In fact, as at the last count, we currently have 287 universities in Nigeria. 287 total. Out of them, you have 52 federal universities, you have 67 state universities, and you have 168 private universities. Total 287 universities. And it's one thing to have the number. It's another thing to have the quality, quantitative and qualitative education. And so your question borders on qualitative. How qualitative are these institutions? And again, we're just talking about universities, because we have the federal polytechnics, 40 of them. And we have the state polytechnics, 51 of them. So you now look at 91 polytechnics, in addition to the 287 universities. And our problem, as you can see, is not in the quantity. Our problem is in the quality. And we must now begin to pay attention to the quality. We have enough. So what are we doing to enhance qualitative education? How have our universities and polytechnics fared in international ratings? Again, we have good news. Good news in the sense that some of our Nigerian universities have been doing well. And not just doing well, have also been acknowledged by international ranking systems to be doing well, to have met that international standard. For instance, recently, Covenant University tops in world rankings. Ahmadu Bello University tops in world rankings. And you now see that Landmark University is in that league. University of Ibadan is in that league. Okay? And many other universities that are in that league. And so we are getting there. We're getting there. And I say we're getting there because some of these universities have shown that we can do better. We can do better. And I am confident that we will do better.
Yes, but still on this issue of quality. Now, what challenges would you say that Nigerian tertiary institutions face when it comes to maintaining consistent quality in their education system?
Well, the challenges I have enumerated. And these are challenges that, if you look now, you find that the universities that have been able to address them are the universities that are doing well. The issue of qualitative academic staff. Nemo that word, non-habits. One cannot give what one does not have. If you don't have qualitative academics, and what do you mean by qualitative? Qualitative academic is an academic who is proficient in research, in his area of specialization, research. That research is also now reflected in the research publications. Because if you're a good researcher, then there will be the manifestation in your publications. Number two are the facilities which to teach. A professor of chemistry, how good is the chemistry lab? A professor of engineering, how good is the engineering lab? A professor of medicine, how good are the medical facilities? Because if you don't have these, then you will just be theorizing. Theorizing. I remember in those days when, as students in the university, some of our colleagues were studying computer science. We were studying computer science, and yet there was not one computer unit for their practicals. And so you're theorizing about computer, and the students have not seen what it looks like, talk less of touching it. So you can imagine that kind of education. You can imagine that kind of education. And so these are the things that must be addressed if we must continue to aspire to meet the minimum international standard.
All right. Do you think Nigerian degrees is, recognized abroad as much as international degrees is recognized in Nigeria? And what do you think we should do to improve mutual recognition and employability?
You see, that's a very good question. Very good question. And it's a very, very sad reflection of how we have lost our standing in international ratings. Very sad. I can tell you, there used to be a time when any Nigerian graduates in any part of the world will be so recognized, so sought after. Once you say you graduated from Nigeria, nobody will question the quality of the education, and you will be given first-rate recognition. And now we've come from that Olympian height of recognition to this low level now, where, unfortunately, every Nigerian degree or certificate is looked upon with suspicion. And you know what that means? When people, on the face of it, are already suspicious. And then the onus now will be on you to prove that you earned this degree. Number one. And number two, even if you earned it, they still question the process of earning it. All right? Take, for instance, this incessant strike we've seen in the country where students have been at home for almost a year, 6 months. And you tell me that student who has been at home for 6 months or 8 months, I remember the time under President Buhari when students were at home for 8 months, and the students will come back and they will give them crash program. Some of them will run a semester in less than 2 months. A whole semester in less than 2 months. And they will now write examination. What does that tell you, Anna? That these students have not been given the requisite training for a semester. Everything has been fast-tracked. And you know that when you fast-track things, that means that you've not done it qualitatively. You've not taken the time and the pains to deliver full coursework and make sure that the students, everything is rushed. And so all of these things have created this impression that our educational standard has fallen from what it used to be. And it's not good for anybody. It's not good. That is why if you go to any foreign embassy now, and our students are subjected to all manner of scrutiny, which wasn't the case in the past.
All right. Now, let's talk about the issue of access and equity when it comes to our education system. Now, we find that despite the universal basic education policy, millions of Nigerian children are still out of school. And then we also find a bridge in educational gap between rural and urban communities. You were talking about having computers in the classrooms, how are the laboratories like? And when we go to the villages, the rural areas, you find that most of the schools there don't even have what we see as basic amenities or infrastructures that a school should have. So how would you say that that impacts on our education system and how, our global output as well?
Thank you very much. Now you've forced me again to go back to our government. You see, this question he asked is a question that's been facing every government in Nigeria. I say Nigeria, but with the assumption of office of our governor, His Excellency Dr. Peter Nubisimba, he came up with this as one of his projects in his manifesto. The smart green schools in every political ward in Enugu State, not in every local government. We have 17 local governments in Enugu State, but political wards, 260 of them. And this governor said that he's going to build one smart green school in every political ward. And you ask yourself, what was the motivation for this? I can tell you that this your question addresses the motivation. The motivation was that the governor, first of all, as a very, very good leader, appreciated, firstly, that education is foundation. Education is key. Number one. Number two, he also identified, this your question, that there is a huge disparity again between accessibility of qualitative education between the rural students and the urban students. Huge, huge gap. And he wanted to use this single policy to address all of that. Provision of quality education and the abridgment of this gap. So that whether you are a child in his village in Owo, or whether you're a child in my village in Abugo, it will not matter. Okay? Because the quality of education you will receive there will be the same quality as the child in GRO in Enugu, or in Independence Lot in Enugu, or in one in Enugu, by the provision of these smart green schools. And now you say to yourself, how? Because in this whole concept of a smart green school, you will have in each of them uninterrupted power supply by solarization. You will have their laboratories. You have their ICT-driven education. You have their teachers who are resident in the schools. You have their practical farms. And more importantly, these children will be provided one meal a day. For somebody said the other day, how I wish that I am starting my primary education in this era, where I'll come to school and I will know that by the time I finish, they will give me one meal. And I'll have computers and have all the laboratories and uninterrupted light, all of them in primary school. And so, if you now look, with this one singular, fantastic educational policy, the government has addressed all these issues which you raised. Number one is the provision of quality education for both rural and urban children. Number two is the provision of a level playing field, where the child in my village, the child in his village, the child in Enugu metropolis will have the same opportunity. And so, if you want to excel, you can excel. Doesn't matter where you are. Location becomes irrelevant. Because what is in Enugu metropolis is in my village, is in his village, and it's in your village. And I can tell you, that is the foundation. And Enugu State will definitely not be the same again in the next couple of years, when these children will start graduating from primary school to secondary school. And now he has a policy where at the tertiary level, we're all preparing to receive these youngsters. There's a policy now where all the tertiary institutions in Enugu State are already preparing with the SENI Center, Center for Experiential Learning in Enugu. Every tertiary institution will have a SENI Center, and this center will simply be the center where we will prepare our own academic staff to be ready to receive these young people who are coming from the smart green schools. Because if we are not ready to receive them, then there will be a truncation of this new educational system. And this is a system that should move from primary school to secondary school and terminate in any tertiary institution, whether you're going to the university or to the polytechnic, it doesn't matter. As long as you are prepared, knowing that these children have been groomed from experiential learning in smart schools, and we must be prepared for them.
Right, but another thing I would also like you to talk about is the issue of sustainability and maintenance, because a lot of good policies and ideas and innovations, just like every other sector in Nigeria, we have people who come in with great ideas and they start, implementing it. But once their administration is over and another administration comes up, we find that there is a change or it doesn't continue again. And I want to believe that that has had an effect over the years in our education system. So what can we do about that?
What we can do, my dear, is for us to always be positive. We must be positive if we must make progress. Even from the family level. Any family that the father and the mother are not positive people, if they are not, then it will truncate the development of the family. What do I mean? Should I today worry more how my children will sustain maybe the house that I have built and not bother to build a house? No, I will not do that. If I can, I will build a house. I will maintain the house as much as I can. And I will also look to my children and see how I can equip them with good education, with good morals, and prepare them well enough to appreciate the value of the maintenance of this family house. Okay? And so I use this analogy to answer the question about the sustainability of this very innovative educational policy of His Excellency. We should be positive and believe that when the governor completes all of this, when the governor has laid the solid foundation, when the governor has done enough to convince Enugu that this is indeed the foundation for our future development, then if we buy into it and we continue to preach this message and we continue to groom leaders who will appreciate this, then I can tell you that whether he is still there or his successor comes in later, that we will still have a crop of Enugu who will know that this is not about Governor Peter Mbah, that this is indeed about his children, his family members, his community, and the entire Enugu state in general. After all, the governor is not doing this just for his people. The governor is doing this for my people, and for your people, and for everybody, because this cuts across every community in Enugu state. And I am hopeful that no community in Enugu state, having seen this wonderful project, having benefited from this wonderful project, because it is their children that will attend these schools, and they see their children getting qualitative education, graduating to be very, very good students, and serving their community in this way. I will not think that any community will allow any future leader of Enugu State to abandon this noble project. That's my hope. Because at this point now, every community should be able to say, no, we appreciate this, because this is very critical to our development, and we will join in pressurizing the government to find means to sustain this project. So it's not just going to be about the government. It's going to be about every community defending the interest of their smart green school.
All right, Professor Obodo, I think I have two decadent questions. Number one is, do you think the current teaching method in Nigeria is aligned with the 21st century standard? And secondly, the federal government is actually pushing for WAEC and NACO, towards full computer-based tests. Do you think that infrastructurally, Nigeria is ready for it when it comes to power, and logistics, the centers? Do you think we're ready?
We are not yet ready, but we are on a short path to readiness. What do I mean? Let me again use our IMT as an example. In IMT today, we are working on a new mantra in IMT. First of all, the new IMT is what we're campaigning for. The new IMT. A new IMT that will be manifested aesthetically and environmentally. In other words, when you come to IMT today, you will see that somebody said that if you are driving past IMT, that even the blind can see that there is a new IMT. And so we want to cascade it to every part of IMT, aesthetically and environmentally. In addition to that, the second component is our staff. In our staff, we have two categories of staff: the academic and the administrative staff. And we want to have a paradigmic shift in mindset that it's no longer business as usual in the way that they do their work. Then the third component are our students. If you see the IMT student today, and if you knew them last year, you will see complete change in their dressing, in the way that they are now serious with their lectures, in the way that they are now serious with academics. And therefore, we are preaching the new IMT. But in this new IMT, we are also looking at a new campaign, which we have also started, and which is what? One diploma, one skill. One diploma, one skill. And we are saying, it doesn't matter what you're studying. Architecture, engineering, business administration, mass communication, it doesn't matter. All we are saying is, as you pursue that your diploma, we also have a plethora of opportunities for skills acquisition. And so we encourage you, as you study mass communication, are you interested in acquiring skills from our German center? We have a German center in IMT now, where we teach German language.
All right, Professor, now what we're saying is, before we get to the student get to the point of this tertiary institution and have all these things that you're talking about,
Yes.
Do you think that WAEC and NACO should be based on CBT? The government is trying to make it permanent. Do you think it is workable? Do you think it is obtainable in Nigeria?
You asked me two questions. So I was taking the first one before this second one. But
Okay.
since you want me to address this,
Yeah.
let me address it. Yes, I think. And I can tell you that Nigeria almost met this standard of CBT, computer-based tests. Every WAEC examination now is CBT, right? And so our young students from secondary school, everybody, even from your village, they must write WAEC and JAM CBT. The same thing in IMT, the same thing in many tertiary institutions. Everybody now has keyed into computer-based tests. Now the infrastructure. Yes, we need lights, we need computers, but we're providing them because that's the new policy. And so with respect to that, I think we're almost there. And because we have all come to the realization that this is foundational. And we must do whatever we should to make sure that we expose these students. And once these students start writing JAM, CBT, they're already prepared to come into tertiary institutions and do more CBT tests. So we are almost there, CBT. And I was addressing the issue of the kind of training we're giving our students.
Okay.
And that kind of training was what I was trying to practicalize with IMT. 1 degree, 1 skill. The idea is that if a student graduates with 1 degree, 1 skill, that student will be more likely going to come out with the mindset of a student who will not be a job seeker, but a job creator. Because you have acquired a skill in carpentry, a skill in, we have this partnership now where students in engineering who want to learn how to service transformers. Yes, in IMT, we do. Okay? We have partnership with Dewdrop Hospitality where students who want to acquire skills in hospitality, any field of hospitality, we have that academy. So you can be studying anything, but you're interested in one aspect of hospitality. And you go there and you acquire skill. Few weeks of training, all within campus. We also have the same thing with the AfriHub Tech Academy, where computer engineering students, computer science students, engineering students who want to go and get certification in ICT can go to that IMT AfriHub Tech Academy and they get certified and they can be working for international companies from Nigeria and earning foreign exchange. Like I said before, we have the German Center now, where any student who wants to acquire skills that will make you employable in any part of Europe, German language, German plumbing, German technicians, German electricians, they teach you all that in our German Center. And so we're encouraging our students to now acquire one skill and graduate with one diploma and with one skill. So the new campaign in IMT today is one diploma, one skill. And they will come out as job creators and not job seekers.
All right, Professor. Now we have seen, cases of senior lecturers and skill teachers, leaving the country for better pay abroad. And with other factors like, brain drain, how do you think Nigeria can retain its best brains, and make the educational sector attractive again?
Well, you see, what we have here, the brain drain, is again the consequence of our conditions of service, where people are working here and their take-home pays are no longer taking them home. And so we need to address the issue, and I know that we have serious economic situation. But more importantly, I believe that it's not just about pay. I believe that job satisfaction, that the more people are satisfied with the job they're doing, they are more likely going to stay because you feel good, okay? And then the conditions of service. As a doctor, do you have the facilities to work? As a teacher, do you have the facilities to work? As a lecturer, do you have the facilities to work? And all of these things will help to retain let's look at the medical field, our doctors and nurses. Many of them leave not because of the money, but just because of the frustration that you have so many patients and you don't have the drugs, and you don't have the facilities to treat them. And for a good professional, that can be demoralizing.
All right. Thank you, Professor Gozie Sunday Obodo.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for joining us once more on the part 2 of if Nigeria education is meeting global standard. And yes, this is where we draw the line on that conversation with Professor Gozie Sunday Obodo. He is the Rector, Institute of Management and Technology, Enugu, Nigeria. Now over to you, Uche.
Yes, thank you once again, Professor Obodo, for coming to the studio and for that very insightful conversation. And we do thank you for being part of our discussions this morning. Don't go anywhere as the morning show continues with a conversation we had on youth empowerment. You don't want to miss it. I am Uchenna Chimdi Oluoha.
And I am Lillian Mali. Have a great watch.